Hello, my friends. Good evening. Let me remind us today that we are living in exciting times. We are living in an age we call, quite appropriately, the information age. And it's good to have enough information to evaluate, to draw our conclusions from. But at the same time, too much information without understanding can be detrimental. We need to understand that we must have wisdom to discern. Well, first of all, we must have understanding, knowledge, and the wisdom to discern what is true knowledge and how to apply it. But indeed, we are living in an information age in which it can be said that what is hidden from the wise and prudent is revealed to the babes and sucklings. We see that in society today for the simple fact that we are in the information age. We are in an age of social media, and information is coming from far and wide about a myriad of topics that may be discussed. And one of the topics discussed very widely is religion. And of course, the way you live is really your religion. And everyone has some idea or ideal of how to live their life based on a religious belief. I've seen how many commentators there are nowadays that can give information about belief systems, and in particular the belief system that we in the Western world have inherited, and we need to put together in a more formulated way this religious information that are considered to be truths, and how to apply them and how to draw conclusions from the information that we gather here and there. So I thought to myself, how could I make the idea of religious beliefs more concise and more understandable? I come up with a graph that I call the Crucible of Faith with color codes. The Crucible of Faith with color codes. And what I can do is just go right ahead and explain what I have here. I want to explain how we get to where we are in our religious belief systems. How did we get to where we are now in our religious beliefs? And of course, our religious beliefs are what we base our value system upon. We look at this country, the US of A, for example, and we find that if someone should ask you what religion you are in America, most people will tell you, I'm a Christian. And most would say that based upon the fact that they lean more to Christianity, that we know it in terms of Christmas, Easter, and all those days that we celebrate so often, so that we consider ourselves Christian in label, if not in fact. And so I want to use this graph to demonstrate how we come to believe what we believe. Now, this is a circle, and the circle is cut in half. There's a line drawn from the top part of the circle to the it divides. There's a line drawn that divides the top part of the circle from the bottom part. And the bottom part of this circle will demonstrate the root of what we believe. The root of what we believe. Now, this portion in red here represent the result of what we believe. The red will illustrate the result of what we believe. And so, let me begin by going from my left to right. That demonstrates the root of what we believe in the Western world as Christians. We begin here in yellow as representing the early church. The early church. And when we speak of the early church, we're talking about Yeshua ben Yosef, favorably known as Jesus. The yellow represent his first coming as taken from, as narrated from sacred scriptures. And it represents the teachings he brought, the life of Christ, as you may say that as well, this yellow portion, because it represents the greatest light that could have entered the world and teach a pathway that is comparable to none hitherto known before he came. He preached, taught the ways of truth, the ways of the Creator, what humanity is designed for. He taught principles that are so die-hard that everyone can relate to the teachings of Jesus Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef. And we're talking about a period around 30 AD here as the beginning of the Christian belief system. Right around here, within here, around 30 AD. Yeshua taught the right ways of life, and for the principles that he believed in and taught, he came up against the Roman government, and for that he was arrested, he was crucified. You know, according to the ways, the penalty for what that law that he broke was within the Roman penal system. If we would compare what happened to Yeshua ben Yosef, Jesus Christ, we could compare it, for example, with what happened with Nelson Mandela. He came up against, Nelson Mandela went against the apartheid system in South Africa. And it came at a time when he was arrested and he was penalized or sentenced, judged, and was sent to prison for 27 years, as it was. Well, in the sacred writings, it is said in Luke, I think it's in Luke 21, verse 13, that the reason he was crucified because he claimed that he was God. Of course, he said other things that caused the judgment that was pronounced on him. And for that, he died. And after he died, he was resurrected according to the scriptures, and he ascended to heaven. And after that, the disciples followed his teachings and preached what he taught. And eventually they became apostles of that teaching. And so we are looking at this period here where the first 30 years of Christendom, let's put it that way, the first 30 years of Christendom. And so this was a minority Christian group that came out of the movement that Jesus left on earth. And so everything that Christendom should be today should be that which followed Christ and the apostles. But something happened. Something very, very significant happened. And what happened is represented in the brown color here. And that which happened has to do with Emperor Constantine, the Roman emperor. He, around the year, about 300 years later, around the year 312, he wanted to unify the Roman government with Christian teachings. And so he adopted Christianity, and it is said that in 313 AD, he was baptized and converted to Christianity. And so what happened is that church, the minority group, Christian group, now became a hybrid movement with the Roman government and under Roman leadership with Constantine. So the church that was left here by Jesus, Yeshua ben Yosef, has now become church and state. Because if you merge Romanism with Christianity, with the leader of the Roman political movement leading both church and state, then what Jesus left here has now been adulterated. What Jesus left is now adulterated. You could say that, well, Emperor Constantine became a Christian, but there's no proof in history that Emperor Constantine lived a Christian life. In fact, history has taught us that even 12 years after his so-called conversion, he still printed coins with the image of the goddess Invictus. And if he's still using that form of identity, it means that he's not fully emerged into the teachings that Jesus left and the apostles speak of and promote. So we find that what was here, the light, I represent this in yellow because I represent here as a time when the light of truth was the order within Christianity. But there, with church becoming church and state under Constantine, there's no guarantee of the pure facts, pure truth that the Christ left when he ascended to heaven. So we find that there's a big change from here to here. And so now we have within this orange portion what occurs within Christendom when church and state are one. What happened in Christendom when church and state are one? What we realize is that we have movements that were military as well as, a Christian movement. We find that after Constantine became part of the church, so to speak, in whatever way he was, we find that he ordered a group of leaders to form what is known as the Nicene Council. And from the Nicene Council, various doctrines begin to shape not only the church, the minority group, Christian group that began around AD 30, but doctrines that was meant to encompass not just church, but state. And so Christianity became a military movement thereafter, because what we hear about is the Crusaders, for example. We hear about the rampages and the murderous behaviors of the Crusaders and what they were doing under the banner of Christianity. That was far off from what Jesus and his apostles would have partaken with, because we are reminded that Constantine himself had a dream, and he saw in the dream Jesus saying that he should go ahead in his warfare under the banner of the cross, and you will win. But we know that wherever he got that dream, it couldn't have been from Jesus, because Jesus said, if a man slapped you on one cheek, you should turn the other one. Jesus was in no way warlike. So why would Jesus appear in a dream to tell you that you're going to have a successful conquest and you're going to triumph over your enemy? Jesus' gospel was love your enemies. Love your enemies. And you cannot love somebody and at the same time strike them down and spill their blood. So we know that what happened after Constantine came into the picture, the Christian church became warlike. And that was not the only thing that we have to look at. We can also look at the fact that Catholicism adopted the Nicene Creed and in about the year 325 AD. And by the year 381 AD, they had used the Nicene Creed to formulate their the major doctrines in Catholicism. So we find here now that, and we know that in Catholicism, there are also a lot of brutality with the Inquisitions and purgatory, all those doctrines formulated from men's imaginations and the will of promoting society in a way that benefits whatever government and whatever powers that were over the people. And so we have all kinds of doctrines formulated by which mankind were forced, coerced, or encouraged to follow. So what we inherited as the root that we inherited and becomes the belief systems for Christendom came from not just Jesus and the original apostles, but from what became of the church as it became church and state, corrupted and warlike. So if we are thinking of being a Christ follower today, where would we go? Would we go back to here when Constantine took the church over and the Nicene Council, developing certain belief practices? Or do we go back to here where it began? Many people who profess Christ sincerely just don't understand that what happened in between here. They got all this and think it's this. They got all this and think it's this, not realizing that this went through a dreadful compromise to the point of what we have here in present day Christendom. So when you talk about, for example, Christian nationalism, and people think that the Bible promotes slavery, the Bible promotes wars, the Bible promotes all kinds of things that many people have done in the past and considered it okay. But we must understand that the teachings that brought about certain things in the Bible, we look at the Bible as infallible. But the Bible is revised every so often. That's why we have so many different translations. While I myself read the Bible and can find good counsel in the Bible, I must also understand that the Bible was written by an anthology of different writers, not all of them agreeing with each other. So if we have a book that is presided over, let's say, or influenced by the Nicene Creed and the beliefs systems from Catholicism, which were anti-Christ or anti-truth, but having ulterior motive to promote the desires of the institution, we must understand that when we want the real thing, we cannot go anywhere here because it's corrupted. We have to find a way back here. But even more than that, we find that if these institutions teach certain things that cannot be proven as truths, then there has to be something better. There are many things that are spoken of within scriptures that didn't come to pass. If we are honest, we'll admit that. Jesus, for example, according to the writing of certain writers in the Bible, promised he would return within the same generation that he lived here on earth. That was over 2,000 years ago, and he has not returned. We must try to understand, how do we deal with that? We know things like Jesus would say, all things are possible if you only believe. But we know that when the time came, according to Scripture, for him to face the Roman soldiers, and he prayed to the Lord above, saying, Lord, if this be possible, let this cup pass from me. It didn't happen. He died. So either he didn't believe or it wasn't possible. So that particular saying did not come to pass. What we know for sure is that all things are possible within the Creator's divine sufficiency in every individual. That which is yours within the divine sufficiency that is in all life, whether it's in animal life, plant life, or human life. All things are possible within that. What is not will never come to pass. And Jesus himself, according to the scriptures, sacred writings, proved that. But so, nowadays, we find that there are movements called, as I mentioned before, Christian nationalism. It has nothing to do with Christ, because what we find is that many during within the past 2,000 years, let's put it that way, many of the things that were done under the banner of Christianity could not be Christ-like or approved by Christ, by Jesus. One big thing is slavery, for example. Slavery. So many texts in the Bible show that all people were created by the Lord, the Creator. And there's no evidence that the Creator is warlike, except the gods that we created ourselves. And we know that there are a lot of gods based on Greco-Roman philosophies. Greco-Roman philosophies have gods, men who are gods. Zeus, Isis, goddess, Ares, Poseidon, all those gods. They were men, but they're considered gods. And so gods really then are creature created. Gods are creature created. And whatever humans wanted to sanction, well, not sanction, but approve, based upon their own ulterior motives, they can find a God that will approve it. So there's got to be something better than that. There's going to be something better than this. Jesus referred to his Father. And I'm going to take a step further to speak of this portion here. And this portion here represents the Creator. And this portion here, I did not use a color because I want to exalt the supremacy of the Creator above all things. I want to exalt the Creator above all things. When it comes to understanding the Creator, there's only one way I know best, and perhaps you as well do. We know the Creator based on the creation. People ask, do you believe in God? People ask, do you believe in God? And I say, belief is only necessary in lieu of proof. What you can prove requires no belief. But the Creator is not under that banner of belief. As long as you breathe, As long as I'm speaking to you now, you know that I exist. I was created. And if I was created, you were created. There is a creator. So the creator requires no belief, only affirmation and embracing the truth of what is evidential. The truth of what you see as evidence that the Creator exists. And one of the ways we get to know more and more about the Creator is by the work of NASA, astronomical science of astronomy, where they can develop the most modern telescopes to look out there to see the expanse of space, universe, that there are things, planets, so far away that if light was to travel from some of the farthest distance that is known to us, I'm not talking about that which is unknown, some of the farthest distance that is known to us through looking through the most advanced telescope. If light were to travel from some of those places to get here, it would take millions of years to reach Earth. So when we talk about the Creator, we are talking about a being, an entity that is unquantifiable, that is immeasurable, and even unimaginable with just our five senses. So I leave this space open to the fact that although we know of the Creator is not knowable within the limitations of our five senses and the limitations of what we can comprehend on this earth. So I leave that open. But what we have from the Creator is the sufficiency of creation. Everything that is here, whether it's plant life, animal life, or human life, is created with a sufficiency that requires no micromanagement from the Creator. The micromanagement is within the thing or person. We are still trying so hard to find out the deepest intricacies of the human body. But as we apply ourselves more and more, we are finding more and more about how we are made, why we move, how we breathe, how we think, how our brains work, and how everything that the Creator has set in motion sufficiently in all of us, how they work. The tree endures its full course of existence. A sequoia tree, the General Sherman sequoia tree, for example, in California, some of those trees have survived for as much as 3,000 years. And how do they survive? Within the tree is everything sufficient. The roots finding different nutrients and different ways to access it, and keep the tree going for so many, many years. In other words, the root of the tree has root sense. The root of the tree have root sense. In the life of animals, they have instincts. That's the sufficiency right there. And humans even have more, or maybe different kinds of senses and intelligence that is within us that comes from the Creator. And these things are all around us for us to see, hear, and experience, and know for sure that the evidence of the Creator is within the creation. And you don't need to ask, do you believe in God? The question should be, how much do you understand about the Creator? And so I've set up this graph this way to explain all the foregoings that I just gave to you. And this, I hope, have given you certain insights into what you believe and why you believe. So until next time, have a great evening and God bless you.